I wanted to take a minute to just recognize a few people that made tonight possible. Things don't just happen by by accident. I wanted to thank my colleagues and team members that assembled tonight's virtual listening session. Janelle McGregor, Frank Crum, Murray Holmes, Brenda Mckenzie, Vic Beide, and Brandon Campbell. And I hope I haven't missed anyone, but that's the City of Tampa team that is so very dedicated to spending some time with you tonight, to hear from you and to learn from you. I want to also welcome, I know we have on the call with us this evening, Councilman Orlando Goods, and I want to thank him for joining us and listening in tonight as well. Earlier today, we hosted a Spanish session of tonight's listening session because we did some homework and we've learned that this area is home to approximately 20% Hispanic residents. Unfortunately, we didn't quite have the attendance we had hoped for, but it was certainly our efforts to hear from everyone in the community. With that in mind, we ask that you share with us. We understand we're in this time of social distancing and doing things virtually. It was important that we got with you this way tonight, but if there's a better way to communicate with you, we want to hear from you. We want to make sure that we're reaching everyone and hearing as many of our customers and our new neighbors as much as possible. We will have a website available after today as well, just again, as another opportunity to hear from you. Tonight, we're coming to each and every one of you because you are our primary stakeholders. You will be our neighbors. You know this neighborhood better than anyone. And tonight, we have brief presentations for you from our mobility director, from our design build team, but the real speakers tonight are each of you. And we will be recording tonight's session because it's important to us that we hear everything well and that we're able to go back and re-listen to make sure we understand everything well. I wanted to take a brief minute to recognize a couple of folks. I want to recognize Miss Amanda Brown. She was our first registrant for tonight's event. So thank you, Amanda. And I also wanted to recognize our East Old Seminole Heights Neighborhood Association, who has the most participants with us tonight. So thank you all, because that tells me your neighborhood is very important to you. That tells me that you did not want to hesitate to join in. And as I'm looking, I also see that we have Councilman Joe Citro on the line with us. So thank you, Councilman, for being part of tonight's event. A brief history of the Hanna Avenue project. This project is actually located at 2515 East Hanna. It sits between 22nd Street and 30th Street. It currently is a vacant warehouse. And very honestly, it's an eyesore. And that's going to be coming down, and we're going to be demolishing that in June. So very, very soon. And we'll be making way for a new city municipal office center. Wanted to share with you the departments that will be housed in that center. So we will have our infrastructure and mobility deputy administrator. You will have the Department of Logistics and Asset Management, and I'm the director of that department, and I will be there. So I look forward to being your neighbor. That is our fleet and facilities team. We have the Development and Growth Management Department. That's your Housing and Community Development Office. That's your Construction Services Center. That's Historic Preservation and Architectural Services. That's your Real Estate team, and that's your Zoning Office. We will also have from the Water Department staff that is responsible for reviewing plans and issuing permits. We will have our Technology and Innovation Department, and we will have our Neighborhood and Community Affairs team. Who's that? That's our arts program, our community partnerships, our Equal Business Opportunity Office, our Customer Experience Office, Neighborhood Enhancement, and we're very excited to also have our Workforce Development team there. The last city department there is the Purchasing Department. Included in this building will be a wellness center for City of Tampa employees. I want to be real clear, This project does not include the Tampa Police Department at all. This site is selected as a location that will be able to offer all of our customers ample parking and is easily accessible. We are very happy that our customers can ride bike, they can walk, they can drive. We have ample parking, and we have a bus station, a bus stop rather, with a 5-minute walk away. So we wanted to make it something that people can choose their route of mobility, and they can still access us conveniently. So I want to turn it over. As I mentioned, we just have a few brief presentations, but at this time, I'd like to introduce our partners from our design build team, Justin McLeod, who's head of Dpr Construction.
Thank you, Adri. Thank you for the opener, and welcome everyone to the call. We appreciate your time being here after hours. We know that that can be difficult. So Dpr Construction, who we are, first and foremost, Dpr exists to build great things. We have been in the Tampa community for a very long time, probably 25, 30 years, and we are completely engaged into the community and Tampa and what we get to do here and who we get to do it for. So with that specifically, what to expect with a construction project of this size is pretty interesting. As she mentioned, this is a pretty large site tucked into a unique area and a unique neighborhood, approximately 11 acres of reformatting and reconstruction. So what the most exciting thing about that is that what is currently there that I think was stated as an eyesore or a difficult looking building will go away, and something new and better will arrive in its place that will help support the community. Also, what to expect with Dpr Construction is that we're here to be good neighbors. We are not a general contractor that sits from afar in another state. Like I said, we're right here in Tampa. We're reactive, we're responsive, we're proactive, and we're engaged in the process on a daily basis. A few things that are important to know is that a project like this requires some really good community commitment and community engagement from a workforce and a contracting standpoint. We have some really good strategies with supplier diversity and contractor engagement, which is at the company level and can also happen at the individual level. In the past, we've been able to host career fairs that will help hopefully get jobs for people in the immediate area working for the trade contractors, and in some instances directly with Dpr Construction, as we are a self-performing general contractor. Some examples of being concrete work, framing and drywall, and specialty systems and doors, frames, and hardware. So if there are tradespeople out there that those kinds of things interest you, there might be some good opportunities coming. We know that executing a project in a space like this that's bound on all sides except for a street side, it means that there are neighbors involved, and that can mean there are environmental concerns. What does, how is dust management handled? Is my property going to be dusty every day? Is it going to be noisy? And there are always solutions and answers to those questions, some easier than others, but we are certainly here to be a good neighbor and a good partner and not affect people negatively during the course of the work. With that, I wanted to briefly introduce our partner design team, Marcel with Fleischman Garcia Architecture, and he could speak just briefly about what we were hired to do and why we're here. Thank you.
Thank you, Justin. Hey, everybody, this is Marcel Maslowski. I'm the Vice President and Director of Design at Fleischman Garcia Architecture. We've been in practice for 48 years here in Tampa, and we're a local firm. So we're very excited to work on this project for the community and for the city of Tampa. I think Justin touched base on all the major aspects of this project. This is a very important project for the community and the city, so we'll make sure that we deal appropriately with it and with the design. So right now we're in the design phase, staging and programming phase. So as we move through, we'll have more community engagements with the community. All right. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Marcel.
Thank you, Justin and Marcel. To our community members on the line, you know, it's critical because, as they both mentioned, right now we're just going into the design part of it. So timing is perfect. And thank you again for being here. And now I'd like to introduce our Director of Mobility, Mr. Vic Beide.
Thank you, Adri, and good evening, everyone. And again, I'd like to reiterate our gratitude for making time this evening, this late. I'm Vic Beide, Director of the Mobility Department, and our contribution to this project and our team's contribution is going to be something I know that's important to all of you, and that is traffic and understanding, you know, the impact that this development will have on our neighborhood, the impact that it will have on all of you all's lives, quality of lives on a daily basis. And that's one of the things that we're going to be studying, and we're initiating this study right now. We've allocated a budget for it, and we're moving forward with it. The limits of the study are pretty broad, and I would like to say that I'm also joined by Brandon Campbell, who is the manager of our Smart Mobility Division. He just waved, and he'll be overseeing some of this effort as well. So let's start with the limits of the study. We recognize that there are many neighborhoods in this area that will be impacted, be it, you know, Woodland Terrace, be it East Old Seminole Heights, River Grove, you name it. So we are casting a wider net when we study the area, and we're studying multiple neighborhoods. So to the east, the limit is 40th Street. To the north, it'll be Sly because that's the access to the interstate. To the south, it's going to be Hillsborough Avenue. Again, major artery connects to I-4 and I-75 to the east, and the Crosstown and the Veterans Expressway to the west, and Nebraska Avenue. That's the limit. It's a pretty broad limit within the area. This also includes roadways owned by multiple agencies. So the city owns a lot of the neighborhood roads. Nebraska and Hillsborough are FDOT facilities. And so we will certainly coordinate any improvements with them as well. The same applies for Hart. We'll make sure that, you know, transit service is available and more frequent to the extent possible, that we improve bus stops and shelters where we expect the most amount of service activation. Other things that we look at as part of this study are intersection improvements. As you all are likely aware, most of the time, delay on or in traffic is usually at intersections, either at signalized intersections or other traffic caused at intersections. So intersection improvements will be critical. We are aware that this entire group of neighborhoods has limited rights of way, typically about 50 to 60 feet. It has narrow roads. We're aware of a lot of these moving parts. They will be considered. We're also aware that we have a really good grid system that we can leverage to assign different road types and make sure that there are enough slow-moving roadways for bicyclists and pedestrians and separated facilities where needed. Other things we'll look at, of course, are crashes and safety issues. We'll look at existing concerns that the neighborhood has had, and this includes sidewalk gaps. This includes potholes and ponding. This includes other needed repair, and of course, background traffic. For example, I know that Hanna gets really rough in the morning, eastbound around 40th Street at the roundabout. We're aware of some of these issues, and to the extent we can incorporate solutions as part of this project, we will, certainly. Other things that we would look at are public safety or access for fire, for police, things like that during emergencies. And do they have the adequate radii around intersections? Neighborhood character, that's going to be very critical for us. This is something new for us generally as a process and a strategy, but some of you might be familiar with the MOVES process that we've undertaken to set the vision for our roadways over the next 30 years, we started with listen first meetings. And that's exactly what we're doing here as well. We want to hear from you all first, even before we initiate design or studies and things like that. So neighborhood character means churches, key shopping areas, parks, frequented areas that aren't subject to kind of peak traffic patterns, if you will. What do people do on Saturdays? And do we need a four-way stop at certain locations? Do we need a crosswalk at other locations? So the goal is to enhance this group of neighborhoods as part of this project by doing small projects as well as this larger project as we approach it. Other things that we would consider is, and this is critical, are partnerships. We want to partner with the community. We want to understand what is important to the community so that we can be responsive when we study or when we design. And this could be, places of worship. This could be, again, neighborhood organizations, critical businesses, restaurants that people like to frequent, and so forth. Partnerships also include institutional partners. So I mentioned FDOT and HART and the county. We will work with them because we need their support. They own some of the facilities in the area. And then finally, I want to speak just holistically. As you may be familiar, Mayor Castor has adopted Transforming Campus Tomorrow. We call it T3 for short. This is the city's overall strategy. And it's a multi-pronged strategy of which transportation is just one element. So when we study transportation elements, we'll look at other aspects of the strategy as well, like sustainability and resilience, like flooding concerns, like workforce development, Adri mentioned, so access to jobs, not only as we develop this facility, but opportunities that exist within the neighborhood to connect to other areas around the neighborhood as well. And again, think crosswalks, stops, anything that is mobility related, we can certainly consider. And then finally, we know our roadways are changing. We have newer features coming up all the time. We're adapting with bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure. So very soon we will have an e-bike and a scooter program citywide. So when we design streets or when we design spaces, these are things we will take into consideration as well and incorporate into our efforts. This will certainly not be our last meeting. We want to hear from you all. We want to hear from the community. So we will be following up. And on that same note, we may not be able to answer all questions today because we're embarking on this journey, but we will try and get you as much information as early as we can. And that is my promise to you all. So at this point, I will hand it over to Frank Crum, but thank you again.
And thank you, Vic, and thank you, Adri and Brandon. And as Vic and Adri have stated to you previously, tonight is a listening session. We are here to hear from you. We want to know what you think. We want to know about your concerns, but we also want to know about your ideas. This is a process that we're all in together. And it is important for us to use this initial meeting as an opportunity to help make our neighborhoods stronger. So with that being said, again, I want to reiterate what Vic just told you. He said that tonight is only the beginning, that this is a journey. We will not have an answer or may not have an answer to all of your questions this evening, but we will apprise you of all developments. And we also would like for you to stay in contact with us. That's why we want you to follow us. And to do so, one of the things you need to do is to check out the email that I put inside of our chat session. It is nca-events@tampagov.net. So if you have any questions following tonight's event, you can always email us and we will get back to you. We will also have a website for you to view to give you the latest information. This is not going to be a one-way conversation, but this is going to be a dialogue between city government and the neighborhoods. And that's what we would like to do. So with that being said, I would like to open the floor for questions. What I would like for you to do, if you have a question, is to write your name inside of the chat feature, and then I will recognize you. And from that point, we'll answer the questions. So I would like all of you, especially our panelists, every one of the panelists, that whether it's Vic or Justin or Marcel or Brandon, please turn your cameras back on, and I'll await some of our questions from our guests.
There was one question from Mr. Keyports directed to Brandon and I, and that was about when will the traffic study be completed? Given that we're already working towards a design and have a concept. So that's a very fair question. Some aspects of the traffic study had already started under current efforts. We did recognize that they weren't enough, and so we're expanding the effort and expanding the area of influence that we're looking at. The procurement process is currently underway, and we anticipate the study to be completed no later than the end of the year. So I hope that answers that question.
We have another question from Patrick. He says, what city services will be moving into the facility? Who would like to take that question?
I can take the question. Thank you, Patrick. So I mentioned the departments, and what I'll do is just kind of go down and talk a little bit about the services. So the Housing and Community Development Office, they have various rental assistance and housing, both purchase and repair programs, and they have counselors on site. And so that would be one of the services that we offer there. From our construction services team, that's the office where you will go submit plans for review for new construction, remodel, et cetera, to obtain your permit. Same is the case if your home is historic, you would need to get a permit for that, and that department would be there, as well as the zoning office. Some other forward-facing departments that you can expect to work with is our community partnerships team. Murray Holmes is on this call. We have numerous. Right now with COVID, we haven't been able to, but the Mayor's Neighborhood University is run through that department. The mayor's, all the community programs and outreach efforts, they will be in this office, as well as our equal business opportunity. We think this one's really huge, because if there are small women and minority owned businesses that would like to register and become certified with our equal business opportunity office, so they can take part of contracts that the City of Tampa has, they're right there. So you can learn more about that program and register your small business to take take that advantage of the opportunity of city contracts that may become available. The neighborhood enhancement team. So our code enforcement officers will be housed out of that office, and the workforce development. This is a new program, and we will be having all kind of apprenticeship programs. Our central fleet will be on site there. So that's where they'll repair the bulk of the sedans. We won't have our larger equipment like the fire trucks or the solid waste trucks. They won't be serviced there, or our water trucks, but the sedans, so like the police cars or the code enforcement cars that you see. And so we intend to have mechanic apprenticeship programs. Our facilities team will be there. Our facilities team actually does the maintenance and repair of the city's over 500 buildings. So we have plumbers on site, we have electricians on site, and we hope to have that part of that apprenticeship program. And there will also be other new workforce development opportunities. We plan to partner with some local schools and tech schools to continue just really investing in our youth and investing in Tampa's tomorrow, if you look at it holistically. And then lastly is our purchasing department. The purchasing department is responsible for all citywide procurement of goods and services. And they partner very closely with the Equal Business Opportunity Office, because they know what contracts go out. And so therefore, anyone that's certified through our Equal Business Opportunity Office, they can partner together and work together. So those will be the departments that will be housed out of 2515 East Hanna Avenue.
Thank you, Adrienne. We have another question, and this one I'm going to ask for Justin to start. The question is from Shannon, and she says, will there be any public space, park, or recreation area as part of this development?
And you'd like me to answer that? So, yes, so there will be space within the building. It has been asked that there's some community spaces and meeting rooms and such. So I know that that is being contemplated in the program. There will also be exterior spaces surrounding the building, essentially the streetscapes presenting towards the Hanna Avenue side and some other green spaces within the property. I wouldn't think of it as much of like a parks space because the land size doesn't allow for that type of use. But there will be the proper commensurate amount that functions well with the buildings that will go on the property.
Now, I believe, Adri, you can add to what Justin just said.
I'm sorry, I was actually responding to Amanda, wanted to know which departments were going to be there, and I'm sending that to her. But yes, there is going to be some green space. I will tell you, we have a limited amount of space on the site. We're currently looking to construct the main building is 150,000 square feet. A parking garage is going to have 5 stories. And because we're going to have parking up front, flat surface parking for our customers, parking garage for our employees. Behind that is our central fleet site where all the bays will be, where they will work on the city vehicles. So green space will be there. I really can't tell you, how much or the size, because again, as we've said over and over, we're just beginning this process. But we definitely intend to have green space and outdoor space. One thing that has been very attractive for me personally, as I'm sure has been for many of you, is the ability to meet outside, outdoors. I mean, we have such beautiful weather here in Tampa. And so we want to build that. We will plan to have green space and plan to have a lot of sustainability initiatives in this. It's going to be a silver LEED building. So there's going to be a lot of components to it.
Adri, this next question is for you and Justin, and it's from Wendell. He asked, how long will this project take to complete?
Take that one if you like. So
Okay.
it's developed in phases. So certainly the first thing we have to do is deconstruct the existing buildings to make the site what we call make ready work for reconstruction. That would happen in the latter part of this year, probably potentially a June or July start, and expect about 3 to 4 months to make the site ready for reconstruction. It's currently the intention to start in early 2022. Got to get my years straight here as they're moving quickly. And the project duration should be a little over a year long.
Thank you, Justin. Vic, the next question is directed towards you. This is from Ruby, and she says, how are you going to keep traffic from being diverted off of the main street? She means Hanna when she says main street, to the side streets to avoid backup traffic. Are you planning alternate ways or routes to keep traffic from being backed up?
Great question.
Hi,
I'll mix it up and pass it on to Brandon.
All right. Fair enough. Thanks for the question, Ruby. But before I answer it, I will also add to the answer about how long the project will take to complete, because I think it's important that we talk also about the potential for the identification of off-site improvements through our traffic study that may not coincide 100% with the timeline of the building itself. So we will see what the traffic study recommends, but there is some potential that some different neighborhood treatments or intersection improvement projects, and I'll say even especially those where we might be coordinating with some of our other agency partners. Say there was some need identified on Hillsborough that we were having to facilitate through FDOT. Sometimes those things may not coincide 100% with the timeline of the building, just so that we're clear on those expectations. In terms of traffic being diverted off the main street, one thing I will say is that there's sort of a natural I'll say, natural inclination to, or a not so natural barrier of the railroad tracks there that will funnel people to Hanna on a pretty consistent basis. There aren't too many places to cross the railroad tracks in the vicinity. So even without taking a real detailed look at what our expected traffic flows are, I can tell you that there's going to be a forced coalescence onto Hanna just by virtue of having those railroad tracks there. We will work with our consultant on the study to try to identify where we will anticipate people coming in. But just even a cursory look for me, my expectation is that the access points off of Sly and Hillsborough and 40th, really the border roads of the traffic study will mostly be coming from those intersections that have a higher order of traffic control. So the roundabout at 40th and Hanna, the signalized intersections along both Sly and Hillsborough, and sort of concentrating on the 15th, 22nd, and 30th north-south corridors. We'll see some others, you know, and I think to your point, traffic backups will force people to take some alternate routes. But Vic, I think, already alluded to, we have some tools in the tool belt to help with some of those, I'll say, high-speed cut-through traffic flows that we see. And, you know, even after we have our initial improvements implemented, we're always here and we're always watching. And if there's something that develops that we do not anticipate, we can apply some of those tools. And I'll say again, mostly recently, the tool that we've been deploying more frequently is to turn intersections into four-way stops for both traffic calming and for better control. Sometimes for various different factors, whether it's sight distance or speeds or what have you. So we'll keep the grid in mind as we undertake this traffic study, and we should be better informed about what those expectations will be when the study is complete.
Thank
If
you,
I could-
Randy. And Vic, please follow up with that.
Yeah, sure. I just want to follow up with another thing as well is, you know, that's one of the reasons why we looked at a larger area, for one. The other is there's also an opportunity here, and that is at the time when folks from the neighborhood are headed out to work in the AM commute, that's when folks headed to the Hanna Municipal building will be coming in. So those routes don't necessarily overlap or conflate. So that is an opportunity. Having said that, it's not always the case, and that's why we study these things. But I just wanted to put that out there, that your outbound is, you know, the development's inbound, if you will, and vice versa.
The next question was directed towards me, and it's from Joel, and he asked about business owners. Will they be given information related to this project? So the short answer is yes. We want to first reach out to those neighborhoods, those individuals and residents within those neighborhoods that are most affected. And as we continue, we will broaden that net to encompass all of the business owners in the affected neighborhoods as well. That would also include the business owners at the 5508, that which Joel referenced in his message. So yes, business owners will be apprised of the information. The next question is from Amanda. Can you write, okay, and I think Adri took care of this. She wanted us to write down that information. I believe, Adri, you already sent her over that information. And then here's another question from Wendell. He asked a question about a 4-lane at Hanna, and I believe that Brandon and Vic actually took care of that question already. Okay, here's another one. The question is, do you anticipate installation of traffic signal at the facility entrance?
Again, good question. The easiest answer is we don't know yet, because typically we run some numbers to calculate and we don't have baseline numbers at this point. But if there is a signal warranted at the entrance of the facility, it will be because we have significant left turns coming in. And depending on the thresholds, that will govern whether a signal is warranted or not. There are other aspects as well, but just looking at the site and looking at the dynamics of the area, that might be the controlling factor. Brandon, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I'll say that in our initial discussions, we'll keep that consideration on the table, but it doesn't seem likely to me that it'll meet the warrants, but we'll see what the study says.
Thank you for that response. And this is also sort of a follow-up, Adri. You talked about this or mentioned this earlier, but Ms. Althea Wynn has a question, which is, will you have a community center / meeting room available for the neighbors?
It's a very good question. And the answer to that is yes, that is something that we are working to incorporate into this project.
Thank you, Adri. And please bear in mind that this is only the beginning. We will continue to send out information as it relates to this project. For all of you who registered, we do have your email information. You will receive information via email. We are also in the works of developing a website where you will also get timely information. And as we continue to grow and as we continue along this journey, there may be other communique devices that we use, such as Nextdoor. And then it's also important for you to know that we will have follow-up sessions such as this. Here's the next question from Mr. or Mrs. B.J. Brown. Will a traffic flow option to Henry Avenue be considered?
I'm not clear about what the question is, but will we consider Henry Avenue as an alternate access or an alternate route?
I believe that's what they're getting at, yes.
Yeah, if it's feasible and depending on the direction of travel, absolutely. We will look to utilize the network to the extent possible, while making sure that neighborhood and residential roadways, our first consideration remains safety, and that means speed management. That means awareness through signage, and that means putting in measures through design as well.
I think also, I wonder if the question might also be related to having access to the site directly from Henry Avenue. And I believe the answer to that, and Adri, maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, is that the property being developed does not go that far south. It's actually a different parcel that is between it and Henry. But in case that's what, if that's what the question was directed toward, I wanted to answer that.
Yes, you are right. It is a different parcel behind.
And just to reiterate, there's a follow-up question here, a couple of them that's related. And I know you all mentioned this before, but I think it's worth mentioning again in terms of any type of studies that have been done along Hanna Avenue or about Hanna Avenue and what's planned, so that we can get a better understanding of the number of trips taken to and from the site.
Good question. We don't have the data right now, but that will be the effort, is to model how many more trips will be created, where are they likely to go, and how do we accommodate that in the footprint. I know it seems like a really high number, a big facility and 500 employees, but just looking at other areas and other efforts that we have done, we should be able to accommodate that capacity.
Okay. Here's a follow-up question as it relates to the site and traffic, but this time from a safety perspective. What are we doing in terms of bike routes and other things that are going to help with that? Sidewalks as well. You have a lot of children who are walking up and down to get to school, whether it be Sly Avenue or Stephen Foster. what are we thinking about as it relates to safety?
Sure, great question. That's always our first consideration. And many of you are likely aware, but in late 2019, Mayor Castor declared Tampa to be a Vision Zero city. This declaration comes with the responsibility, of course, for all of us, because in essence, adopting Vision Zero means, not accepting a single traffic-related fatality and recognizing that they're avoidable through design, engineering, and all of those things. So that was just to say that it's important to us. And when it comes to, traffic calming or even access that currently may not exist, and there are many neighborhoods, unfortunately, in Tampa that don't have sidewalks. Our overall sidewalk gap is like 1,200 miles. But where we know that there are small sidewalk gaps within the 4 or 5 neighborhoods, we will look to close those gaps. Where we know there's elevated pedestrian activity, and not just in the peaks, but like I said, in the weekends and all of that, we will add crosswalks. These will address current problems or challenges that we have. And projects like these are an opportunity for us to address some of these issues. Our typical annual transportation budgets are so tight that unfortunately we're not able to provide the service levels always that we want to. And that's where we look at projects like these as an opportunity.
So in terms of that, I've got a follow-up question here. Some of our residents in that particular area, they understand that there are going to be some traffic issues, at least in their opinion, there will be. And they want to know about the weekend activity and how are we going to handle traffic on the weekends? What's the benefit to it for them?
So that is a slightly easier question because a lot of city staff are at home on weekends and not working. So we don't expect elevated traffic levels on weekends. We really expect the impacts to be in the peaks Monday through Friday typically. Having said that, we do have some emergency management teams in this facility as well. But of course, and thankfully, emergencies are an occasional occurrence.
Okay. Another question, this time related to infrastructure. Heading east on Hanna Avenue, any ideas or any concepts out there about beautification efforts, whether it be paving improvements, curb appeal? What can you all say at this point?
At this point, we don't know where critical improvements will be required. We can guess. I mean, 22nd and Hanna, that's a no-brainer. It's very, very constrained. A few years back when we were even trying to upgrade a signal out there, it was hard to find rights of way to put a pole foundation. So we know we need some improvements at intersections. Critical points, Hillsborough, Nebraska will have to assess current capacity and things like that. In terms of beautification, we will try and accommodate landscaping to the extent we can, but we really need to know what the scope of the overall work is relative to the budget to really understand what other enhancements we can make beyond the safety and mobility enhancements.
And I would say another question related to that, and Adrian, you spoke to this before, has to do with the question of green space. In particular, residents in the Seminole Heights area want to know about that. Seminole Heights East, is there a way to, or how are we looking at adding green space, even though there's a tight budget?
So on this particular site, it's, as we've said over and over, it's currently being designed. So I really don't know how that's going to look. But I can tell you, Carol Gordon, I'll say, she has been key from the beginning, talking about the importance of green space. So one thing I can tell you, while it may not be right there at 2515 East Hanna, what we're doing right now and what we will continue to do as your new neighbors and as partners with the community is continue to enhance the overall area. As Mr. Bide said earlier, he's already looking past that one area, the area on Hanna, up to Hillsborough, all around. So I know we're going to be working with our Parks and Rec department. I can't tell you exactly where that will be, but I can tell you we have heard you. We understand the need. I myself have had conversations with Parks and Rec already about a couple of areas in there. So can't directly answer your question today, but I can tell you we have heard you loud and clear.
And I have one final question listed here, and this is from Amanda Brown. And she was actually the first person to sign up for tonight's listening session. And Amanda says, did I hear that the site will have a 5-story parking garage?
Yeah, and she heard that from me. Again, we're still designing it, but our team is looking at, we'll have 500 employees approximately in that building. And we want to reserve the flat surface spaces out front, as many as possible for our customers. So I don't know if it will be 5 exactly, it may be less, but we just need to accommodate our 500 employees. And that's still being designed, but I am the one that said that, just kind of thinking, the 500 employees.
So at this point, does anyone else on the call, residents, have any other questions that they would like to ask? Okay, we've got another question here from Ruby. Since this area has a large elderly population who may have respiratory or asthmatic issues, how will you address those issues? And I guess that would come from the actual construction process. So maybe, Justin, this is something that you can shed some light on.
Sure. So yeah, if it's related to the construction activity, site development is usually very easily managed with water trucks. So dust remediation is about keeping the soils that can get into a fine particulate and get into the air a little wetter than everywhere else. So when it comes to land development, that's a pretty easy strategy to keep the dust down.
Very good, thank you. And do we have any further questions? Any more questions for tonight? All right, yes, from Tim. Tim writes, can we hold a walking tour with the staff to see firsthand the bike pedestrian issues?
Yes, happily. I think Adri is the point of contact on the project right now, or Murray, I'm not sure, but we're happy to do so. And we'll bring planners and engineers because they see the world differently and we're better for it.
Yeah, and on this one, I know that Murray speaks numerous times with Tim and Carol and those other community leaders. So yes, if I'll let Murray be that contact because I know they speak frequently and I would hate for that not to occur.
Another question says, will this project affect water in the immediate area?
We may need some
May I have to
clarity.
get back on that?
How about Justin and then Vic?
Yeah, so we may need a little clarity on the question.
So I would imagine that this individual is maybe talking about the actual water supply, the water table, the way in which water flows to the area. So I guess the question would be, will it in some way negatively impact either water pressure and or just the amount of just the way in which water is serviced through that part of the city?
Looks like they followed up, yeah, specifically water pressure. So from a construction standpoint, we wouldn't be able to speak about the infrastructure of the system in the city. The engineers certainly would handle whatever needed to happen to accommodate that, but that would be outside of the project boundary scope.
Yeah, this is something we may have to get with our water colleagues and follow up on. So we'll table that question for now.
Thank you. And as we said, we will always make sure to keep you apprised of any changes. There is another question here, and it has to do, and Adrian, I'm going to toss this question to you. It has to do with potentially moving the TPD headquarters to the same area. Would you happen to know about any concepts related to that? Has that process started?
Yes, so we definitely have we have plans on selling the TPD headquarters downtown as we know it. That building was constructed in 1962, and it is beyond repair. So that will be sold, and we will be relocating part of the team that's currently housed in headquarters right now. It will be the Public Safety Administration building, and a lot of the departments that are currently housed in that building right now won't be there. So, we've added police substations citywide. So that's where the police actually operate out of. In the administration building, you have your chief and you have records and you have some other departments, evidence, those kind of things. We are still in discussions to secure a property to relocate the Public Safety Administration building, but we are not there yet. So we don't own the property yet. So it's still in the works.
Okay, thank you, Adrian. And I want you to follow up on this question, you as well as Justin. The next question comes from Amanda, and she would like to know if there are any ground contamination issues related to the property, and if so, how will those challenges be handled?
So I can jump in here. There are issues on the property, but this is a little bit outside my area of expertise on remediation. I can say that I know that there are issues that are being monitored, but that the improvements to the site on the surface will not affect the subsurface conditions. Beyond that, it's probably up to a different subject matter expert to speak about that.
And I can add a little bit to it. The site is a brownfield site. And what that means is we have our environmental team, it's a City of Tampa team, that they monitor the site. The site has been there all along and had not been monitored. The contamination, the plume that exists is very, very, very far down in the ground. It doesn't affect anything. It gets tested annually. And the most recent testing occurred in February. It says that the site is fine, that the plume is what we call it, the environmental issue that exists very, very deep underground has not grown at all. So that's a good thing. And we're safe. We're moving on to the site. So the site is fine from an environmental side.
Thank you for that, Adrian. Then we got a few more questions here. One question asks about the local roads, and during the construction process, there will be several trucks, and will those trucks be moving on those local roadways? Russ, what is the route for some of those trucks?
So typically we have truck routes designated all over the city. Typically, trucks are restricted to those routes unless they need to use a roadway to access their final destination, in which case, and only in that case, are trucks allowed on local roads. So we have we have a few collector roads in the area that trucks can ply on, and without really, speaking to the means and methods, generally, we expect the trucks to remain on the major roadways and not go into the local roadways unless there are extenuating circumstances like a water main break or something to that effect. But I hope that answers the question.
Thank you. Another question as it relates to safety has to do with wheelchair accessibility and those who have to travel down those streets like North 24th Street, and what type of accommodations are going to be set up for them in terms of safety measures?
So if this is an existing challenge that the neighborhood has that has not been addressed, we would love to find out more about it and know what the origin or the destination of some of these trips is to make appropriate accommodations. If the question is relative to the work zone and construction, then at this point we don't know where, construction vehicles might be. So to the extent that Justin can address this question right now, that's great, but otherwise it'll be something that's an unknown at this point.
Yeah, at a high level, we would have a traffic control plan that would talk about how we enter and exit the site during the construction, what crossings happen, and then if there was a pedestrian corridor, say a sidewalk that went in front of the property, how that would be handled, that would all be mapped out. So yes, if there is current pedestrian access there now, we would maintain that through the course of construction, or it would be diverted to the opposing side of the street.
Thank you for those answers. Now back to the residents. Do you all have any further questions that you would like to ask at this time? If not, please feel free to follow up with us. I just put an email inside of the chat that you can use as a follow-up to tonight's conversation, nca-events@tampagov.net. We've appreciated everything that you've given to us tonight in terms of your feedback, in terms of your questions. And we want to make sure that you understand that this is just the beginning of the journey. There will be other opportunities for us to engage. And before we conclude tonight, I want to start with Vic and Brandon. Do you all have any final comments?
I'd just like to, reiterate and thank everyone for making time. And the other is to just highlight that we're just getting started. So I know there are some questions that we may not have been able to answer, but we will get these answers. And we really look forward to the walk through the neighborhood with some of the neighborhood members. They always help us.
And Brandon?
Yeah, I'll just echo Vic. We really appreciate your engagement and look forward to continuing this process and keeping in touch with you all in the neighborhoods as we seek to make this project the best that we can make it.
Thank you, gentlemen. Amanda just asked a question. She says, can you provide a timeline? Will there be more meetings before the final plan? Yes, there will be more meetings, and we will be able to provide information as it relates to a timeline. As we get that information, we will disseminate it to the public. We will make sure that it's available to you. Now, the next question that I have here is from Shannon and Justin. I'm going to give you a chance to speak, and then also you can answer this question from Shannon. Shannon writes, will construction hours be limited to minimize noise, particularly for the immediate neighborhood?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we run into this pretty frequently, whether we're working in occupied spaces or adjacent to special use or special function facilities. In this case, I think most of the surrounding area is residential and neighborhood, which lends itself obviously to daytime construction only. Typical construction hours are 7 a.m. to 3:30 and sometimes stretch a little later into 5 or 5:30, depending on the activity. But we would engage the immediate neighbors to find out what their uses, needs, events are that would be disrupted by the construction and work out a plan to be a good neighbor through that process.
Thank you so much, Justin. Is there any final comments you would also like to make as it relates to tonight's event?
I just want to say thank you for having us. It's great to have everyone here and see the depth of engagement from the community. From the design build team perspective, we exist to build great things for great clients and great people, and we're looking forward to being a continual part of the process. So thank you.
There are two people on the call that you can see that have played an instrumental role in this process thus far and will continue to do so in the future. And I'm talking about Murray Holmes and Brenda Mckenzie. They've been a very important part of this team. And I wanted to open the floor first to Murray. Many of you know her because she's in the neighborhood so often. So Murray, would you like to say something at this point?
Yes, good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us. The neighborhood leaders know me. I'm their go-to person. We talk regularly, and I appreciate you're always showing up. I know right now the city is really committed to coming to you and asking your opinion on a various topics, and more to come, whether it's mobility or we're coming out with the parks master plan will be coming to you. So I also really want to thank you for your dedication and your commitment to neighborhoods and citizens. You're what makes Tampa a great place to live, work, and play. Your commitment. We all realize you are volunteers. You do not get paid to lead your neighborhood organization. So I just wanted to personally thank you so much for all that you do.
Thank you for your comments, Maria. Kudos to you. And Brenda, the floor is yours.
Good evening, everyone. It is a pleasure to be here and to have listened directly to the comments and the wonderful questions. I will be working on workforce partnerships and really community-based, community-centric training to make sure that we're connecting people to jobs, both relating to construction and apprentice and other meaningful career pathways. So as we develop the plan, looking forward to coming back and sharing, and it's really going to be an exciting place to be. So thank you.
Thank you for your time, Brenda. But someone wanted to know about operating hours for fleet maintenance.
Fleet's hours are such to accommodate where they're currently located. They have to work on the garbage trucks, and they have to work on some of the other departments that start very early morning hours. So currently their hours are 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. But that won't be the case because the solid waste department is going to be moving to 34th Street eventually. So the work hours have not yet been determined, but I suspect them to coincide with who will be our customers at the time. So I'm thinking 7:30, 4:30, 5:30, the latest, something like that.
Okay, thank you. And Adrian, I'm going to give you the final word tonight. And first, folks, I would like to say thank you. I've thoroughly enjoyed our time together. This is just the start of a great journey. And Adrian, I would like to turn it over to you for final comments.
Thank you, Frank, and kudos to Frank. Frank is our communications and engagement manager for this project. He's done an amazing job. So thank you, Frank. He put tonight together. And I wanted to thank all my city colleagues on this call and our partners with DPR and Fleischman Garcia. But my main thank you goes to our community members. Tonight's questions were great questions, very valid questions. And listening to you and learning from you is where our success is going to lie. I can tell you, all of us on this call, we're excited about tonight's listening session. It wasn't something that we just had to do, but it was something we wanted to do. And I appreciate you all taking the time to share with us your questions, your thoughts. This is the first municipal building that's going to be built in a very long time. City Hall downtown, the one that we say the newer of the two buildings, that went up in the 70s. So that's not new at all. So this is a great opportunity, and we want to get it right. And we want to get it right, not just for us, but more for you. We're really excited about being your neighbors. And we really, really just wanted to thank you so much for sharing all that you did. This is the beginning of our journey, as Vic mentioned, as Frank has mentioned, and we are all here for you. So look forward to seeing you, hopefully in person soon. It won't have to continue to be virtual, but remember, I did ask, what's the best way we can reach you? Let us know that. Connecting and staying engaged with you is our commitment. And I can't wait to meet you all at the groundbreaking and when we're on site at our new home on Hanna Avenue. So thank you, stay safe, and I'll see you soon.